What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Dom and Pop DC Sports Talk Plus podcast. Breaking news: the Pope is Catholic, the day ends in Y, and the sky is blue. So we're going to be talking about quarterback, touching on a little bit of ownership situation, and of course, getting into the NFL draft because that is what we do here in Washington. Stay tuned, guys. Pop, how you doing, man?
Bringing the opening strong today, son.
Yes, sir. I figured I'd give the people what they want. It's been a Washington week in Washington. It feels like not much going on, but at the same point, lot happened. Lot happened for us to talk about. We've got,
Always.
like I said, we've got some quarterback stuff to talk about because we always do. We've got some ownership stuff to talk about because we always do. And then, of course, we'll spend some time talking about the offseason. Of course, it's March. It's officially draft season. I think it's time to start looking into what's going on there. I guess the biggest on the field news: Duran Payne officially hit with that franchise tag this week.
Yeah, good call.
So yeah, gotta announce that. At this point, it's kind of old news by the time you're hearing it from us, but that is something that happened. It's been writing on the wall. I mean, I think JP was reporting it as early as like October that it was going to happen. So we've known it was kind of coming. It's disappointing, but I think it's just a product of some of the bigger picture stuff in terms of like ownership and where this team is at. I just don't think we're in a long-term deal mindset right now, unfortunately. And it's
Well,
just
yeah, you
hard when you
seem
have a
to.
guy
I
have a
mean, we've,
career year like that.
but doesn't mean they're not going to try and get a long-term deal done.
I
You
hope
seem
they can.
convinced that
I
it
hope they
means they
can.
will.
I just am I'm of the mindset where they say you can't approach a guy to restructure his contract unless you're willing to cut him. I kind of feel like you can't franchise tag a guy unless you're willing for him to walk after that year. That's kind of my feelings of it. And we saw it play out with Brandon Sheriff. We saw it play out with Kirk Cousins. You see it play out all across the league with different guys who get tagged and then end up somewhere else. It just, to me, B. Mitch talks about it a little bit on the radio. It seems like something that was initially implemented for players to get their money when they perform well, but it seems like now it's kind of being used more for ownership to pay out a quick hit of cash and then not have to have long-term commitment to a guy, to kind of delay having to pay people. So I think that's where we're at with Payne. I think the organization's decided, they want to stay relevant next year. They want to be able to win and compete. He's obviously a core part of that, but they don't want to tie up what could be, upwards of $40 million a year with him and John Allen on the interior of that defensive line when you've got Montez Sweat, Chase Young coming down the pipeline, guys that are going to need to get paid potentially. That's the decision they've made, and I guess
I
you got
just,
to move forward
I
with it.
disagree.
So
I mean, I think they want to sign him to a long-term deal. I have no reason to doubt what they're saying now. Whether or not they're going to be able to get it done. A lot of that probably depends on the ownership situation, but I think it was a smart
yeah,
move to franchise tag him. You can't let him just walk. And yeah, the smart move for the organization might be if they can't get the deal done to go ahead and trade. But
yeah,
I think it's very early days. It's too soon to reach those conclusions.
yeah. I mean, I agree. I agree with the decision to franchise tag him in the position that we're in now. It's pretty much our only option. Um, but I do wish that the situation was managed differently than it was managed leading up to
Well,
this. Like franchise
truth
tag is
is
kind of a
he
last resort, but it
I
is what it
mean,
is.
truth is that he did have by far his best year last year, and up
Yeah,
to that point, he was a bit inconsistent and had
yeah,
a little bit of a knock against him for maybe not always putting out, maximum effort. I don't know whether that was fair or not, but he seemed to kind of appear and disappear a bit game to game. And, you know, I think that in benefit of hindsight, given the year he had, you say, oh, they should have locked him up sooner. But how he had played up to that point, I'm not sure whether or not that was the right call. we'll have to see how it plays out. Anyway, I mean, you can only go move by move, given the situation that, as it
Yeah.
stands right now. The franchise tag was the right call.
Yeah. So good news, we'll at least have Payne around for next year. Um, and hopefully, they can
If he's
work
not
out the
traded.
if he's not traded. And hopefully you can work out the long term deal there. I said it earlier in the year. I maintain it. I believe it. I sent you a text with another defensive end's combine numbers to back it up. I think you trade one of the DNs, whichever one you can get the most for. Trade one of the DNs, and you keep Payne because interior defensive linemen are hard to find, and these defensive ends are coming out absolute freaks of nature. They keep getting stronger, bigger, and faster every year coming out of college. There's always good defensive ends available, and I just don't think, Chase Young, we want to build the franchise around, but Sweat in particular, he had a career year last year. You've got a lot you can get from him, but I don't see out of Sweat personally. I hope we keep him around forever and he makes me eat my words. I like the kid, but I don't see out of Sweat the defense changing potential that I've seen out of Payne. And when you look at Nolan Smith out of Georgia, 4.39 40-yard dash, 41.50 vertical, 10.8 broad jump at the combine. That's insane. As a defensive lineman, that's a freak of nature. These guys keep coming out. So
Yeah, I agree. And
I
I mean, Sweat's career year, he still wasn't, one of the
he
best
was good.
ends in the league. He
Like,
was okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So I think that he's the most likely to probably end up walking,
Yeah,
depending on what the market looks like for him.
yeah. And Cam Curl is another name I want to watch in terms of how are we looking to lock this guy up long term. I think he's the most integral piece of the defense, in my opinion. I know his pops follows us on Twitter, so got to keep it all positive on Cam Curl
Absolutely.
out here.
It's
But
all it
yeah, I
takes.
want to figure that out long term for sure. But anyways, speaking of long term, Ron making some interesting comments on quarterback one this week, kind of walking back a little bit of the Howell Jazz, saying that he's looking for a veteran to compete. I think he said something along the lines of he'd love for Heineke to be a part of that plan. Um, some interesting stuff coming out from Ron Rivera. Pop, where do you think on a scale from this is just Ron talking because he has to talk and people are asking him questions to maybe this means something? Where do you land on that? What do you take of this?
Well, here's my take on that, and I think it's exactly what's going on. One, I think B. Mitch hit the nail on the head. He said Ron talks too much, which some people were giving B. Mitch a hard time because B. Mitch likes to talk too, but that's what he's paid to do, right?
Yeah,
But
not paid to coach a football team.
right. I mean, I don't know why Ron's felt the need to put all the cards on the table out there, to the press about what our plans are at quarterback.
Yeah,
I don't know that I understand. Maybe you could help explain it to me what the upside is for the Commanders going out and telling everybody what your plans are at quarterback. But having said that, he seems to be very transparent about it. I think this is what happened. I think Howell is still the plan. I think
yeah,
there are two messages Ron wants to send, and this is why he's backpedaling a bit. One is he wants to send a message to Howell, you got to earn it. We're not going to just hand you the job.
yeah.
But secondly, now he's going, oh, shoot. If I really want to attract one of these veteran quarterbacks that are out there, I need to change the dialogue
Oh,
a
that's
little
a
bit
good
and
perspective.
say they're going to have an opportunity to compete for number one. And he keeps bringing Taylor's name into it, right? So,
Yeah,
like, to me, he's trying to tell these guys, you're going to be part of a competition, and
yeah,
specifically trying to sell Taylor on, if you come back, I'll give you a shot. But I personally think that if it's Taylor, he's got no shot. I think the
yeah,
plan is that he's the backup. And then, so I think if they want to land the guy they want to land, which is definitely probably one of these second tier guys, not the Garofalos or the Cars or any of that. Um, I think that he's just trying to put it out there that you're going to have a chance to compete. But I do think the real desire of the team is for it to end up being Hal. That's my theory.
yeah. That's a great insight, Pop. I didn't I thought you were going to go a different direction with that second point, and I was I agreed with the direction I thought you were going in, and then I was pleasantly surprised by the insight you offered there. That was really good. I've never thought of it from that angle. I 100% agree with everything you just said, and I think you got to it before I got the chance to say it. But I think Ron's comments, if you want to read between the lines, I think that 100% eliminates a Derek Carr, a Jimmy Garoppolo, and Geno Smith from this conversation, and probably Daniel Jones as well. These are some names that varying levels of realisticness, but have all been tossed around in terms of these are starters that are on the market. I think it takes those guys out of the conversation. And I think maybe we start to look at that next quarterback coming in being like maybe an Andy Dalton, maybe a Jameis Winston, maybe a Jacoby Brissett, maybe a Marcus Mariota, those level guys. And I think Heineke belongs in the conversation with that level. I personally think Heineke, here's what I think will happen with Heineke. I think he's going to think he has a chance to start, go test the open market, find out that being 33 out of 32 is not really good enough to get a chance to start most places. And I think people are going to be less forgiving than maybe Washington fans have been of him because they didn't have him come in and play like he did against Tom Brady in the playoffs for his first impression. And they're going to look at the overall scope of things and say, this is a backup quarterback with about a 500 record. He can come in and be a decent backup to our young guy. And then he's going to say, why pick up and move all the way across the world? And he's going to end up back in Washington. That's my
So is he your first choice for a veteran
yes,
signing?
yes. Because why else? He's proven he can come. He's proven he can do the backup job exactly the way we would need the backup job to be done if he's coming in. So why would we replace that? I think the third point that I was going to say is I think Ron is walking his comments back as well in the world of a little bit of that NFL style self-preservation. There's a little bit of that at play as well. And I think Ron's also thinking about, okay, I can't just go out and 100% guarantee we're going with this young guy because people are now asking questions. They're wondering, why didn't we go to the young guy against Cleveland? Why didn't we go to the young guy earlier in the season? People are starting to question whether or not I have a plan. So I'm going to walk it back a little bit. I'm going to lay down, hey, he's got to compete because I want to give off the impression that I'm not just giving this kid the job haphazardly. I'm doing my due diligence. I'm going through and making sure all my boxes are checked. But I think all of this leads us back to the same point, which is if we're betting today on September 10th or 11th or 12th is usually when the season starts. I don't have the number off the top of my head, but that second week in September, who's taking that first snap for the Washington Commanders in the burgundy and gold? Major Tutty's on the sidelines saying, give me a C, give me an O, give me an M, whatever. Who's taking that first snap? I think we're both betting it's Sam Howell at this
Well,
point.
based on what we know right now, it's Sam Howell. I think
Yeah.
I will say your first choice is Heineke. He's not mine, and
As a
I give it
backup, not a starter. I
well,
want Howell to start. Let me clarify that.
right. But you've got to be prepared for him to start. If Howell's not ready, I mean, Howell's a Howell is someone that I feel positive about. I feel like I don't. I think people bring up the fact that he's a fifth rounder, and I think that he had a much higher grade. And evaluators are saying now that was probably he was drafted way below where he should have been.
Yeah.
And there's a hope that I have that he's the guy. And but having said that, we have to be prepared for the fact that he may not be. And if he's not, and it's Taylor again, and oh my God, like, so for me, if I've got to choose from the options that are out there, and it's hard, like it is difficult to get excited when you look at some of these names. Like, we've already said that you take um the top guys off the board like Jackson, Garoppolo, Carr. Well, now you're looking at, a Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold, Teddy Bridgewater, Daniel Jones, which I think is off the board, Case Keenum, Mason
Off the board if they're paying him
Rudolph,
$45 million. I'll tell you that much.
right? Jacoby Brissett,
Just-
Geno Smith, who's probably going to get re-signed by Seattle. But I
yeah.
think a guy like a Jacoby Brissett or maybe even a Baker Mayfield if you could land him would be
Yeah.
preference for me over a Taylor Heineke.
Yep.
Because we have to be
I
prepared that this guy might play. And if we,
yeah.
and I just feel like, if we start the season with Taylor as the starter, and remember, I mean, one of Taylor's big advantages was his familiarity with the offense, which is
Yeah.
out the door now. It's
Yeah.
completely out the door. So I think my number one is Jacoby Brissett of like a realistic option, maybe a Teddy
Yeah.
Bridgewater as well. Those would be at the top of my list.
Yeah, Jacoby Brissett was my number one going into the offseason as well. So I'm with you on that. I really like Jacoby Brissett. I actually think he should be a starter somewhere in the league.
That's the kind of guy you want to get, right?
I think he's a decent quarterback. Like I think Jacoby Brissett should be hanging around in that like 15 to 25 range of quarterbacks where we always say like they're not quite good enough, but it doesn't really matter once you get past a certain level. I think he should be there. I think he should be starting, but guys want to gamble on upside with guys like Baker. I personally keep Baker Mayfield away from this team. I'm not a fan of Baker Mayfield. I just don't want to get involved with that. With that amount of draft capital, it just feels like a lower stakes version of the Wentz situation all over again. It's like
He's a
this guy
free
was
agent.
supposed he's a free agent, but what draft capital? I mean, the he got drafted number one overall. You always carry that with you to a certain level in the league, and I kind of just don't want that hanging around. But the reason why Heineke for me is the reason why I want Heineke is the same reason that you don't want Heineke is that I personally think Heineke is proven if he needs to come over and take over a situation that he's not good enough or he's not the situation wasn't designed for him. He's proven he can do a good enough job. For you, you don't think that's quite a good enough job, and that's totally fair. I think it's just a difference of opinion at that point. But I think personally, Howell's going to be QB1, and I think also one last thing on this before we move on. I've seen the same comments be made when Ryan Fitzpatrick came to town. And Ryan Fitzpatrick, remember, was a free agent. They brought him in on a 1 year, $10 million deal with a second year option. And Ron said it's an open competition between him and Taylor. We brought him in to compete with Taylor.
I was wondering where you were
And
going with that one.
we knew from the second he said it, Ron's full of it. Fitzpatrick's going to be the starter. And I think, honestly, if you trace the patterns here, if Taylor had a chance to start in DC, that would have been known in week 18 and he would have started against Dallas and he would have never came out against Carson. I think the come out for Carson. I think the writing has been on the wall that Howell was going to start this year the whole way. And I think honestly with the way this team is built, the amount of money we have left to spend, I you don't have a good argument in my opinion for starting Jacoby Brissett over Sam Howell at this point, other than if Howell's not ready. And if Howell's not ready, I think we know that by now, and I think we're drafting a quarterback. So I want to bring that to our next segment. What are we doing with pick number 16, Pop? What do you think is happening there?
Well, looking at the mock draft stuff, just
It's
picking up on
chaos.
that one. Yeah, I mean, there's about 20 names in there that different
Yeah.
people are picking. It's amazing how many. Shout out to Hogs Haven for um, their breakdown there, but I think they've got like eight different defensive guys that are possibilities. And I think it was like
Yeah.
six different offensive guys that are possibilities. So either the
Yeah.
most popular choice is either a cornerback or an offensive lineman. I
Yeah.
would, you know, absolutely personally favor offensive line, you know, number one, but obviously you do want to try and stay as close to that best player on the board as you can. Not
Yeah.
necessarily in the first round, but at some point, I would like to pick another quarterback up that they really like. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like it's interesting. Like once you get past offensive line, which I think is the obvious choice as far as positions of need, what other positions are you most, you know, do you feel like are the biggest positions in need?
Yeah. I think quarterback is definitely an obvious one. I think we're all looking at it through rose tinted glasses, that position last year, because things kind of worked out. Luckily, we got lucky. William Jackson sucked. We got rid of him. And then Benjamin St. Juste, because William Jackson was somewhere between hurt and terrible, Benjamin St. Juste got the opportunity and he showed flashes. He had games of being really good. He had moments of being really good. You like the way that talent looked on the outside. But if we're looking at it in a summary of where he's been the last 2 years, there have been a concern of injuries. There's been a concern of he wasn't that great before getting that chance on the outside, and there was only a very small sample size of him being really good there. Kendall Fuller, at one point in the last year, had the most fantasy points allowed on him in the NFL. And he turned it around too, got a lot better. Props where props is due, but he's probably our best all around cornerback. I think you have to keep him back there. People are talking about he's a potential cut candidate. I think you're crazy. I think
Yeah,
he's our
no way.
best option there. I really like him. Very versatile, all arounder cornerback. He's great to have as your second guy. I don't think we have a first guy at cornerback. I'm not ready to crown Benjamin St. Juste that yet. I think he's 2B right now. He
Yeah,
could be one,
but
but I
for
think he's
me, like I
2B.
think we've neglected the offensive line so much. I mean, the last time we picked offensive lineman high was Brandon Sheriff. Before
Yeah,
that, it was Trent Williams. I mean, the fact that we've just neglected offensive line, if the guy they want is there, I think you've almost got to go offensive line in the
I
first
agree.
round. And the thing is, it's wide open. It could be a
Yeah,
guard, it could be a center, it could be a tackle. I don't think any of those things would be a problem, right? So I think for me, I've got to go that way first. I think the defense as a whole, even if we came back with a reload with mainly the same guys, with some of the youth that we have at some of the positions, I think it hopefully, I mean, you got rounds 2, 3, 4, and 5 to
yeah.
continue to add into different areas, but I don't want to go defense first round, although I guess we did go receiver last time around.
So,
Um, but
little
anyway,
little bit of a curveball here. I'm gonna toss it to you. I'm pretty sure I know your answer, but I'm gonna swing it anyways. Right? Batter up. It's been rumored we need a cornerback. That's not been rumored. We need more depth at cornerback. There is a cornerback that is being rumored for trade right now. He has not been linked to Washington in any way, but they say they might want a first round pick for the guy. His name is Jalen Ramsey. How would you feel about potentially trading a first round pick? I'm bringing this up because Washington has not come up in these conversations. So I want to be the first to do it. If he'd be interested, if it was possible, we need a cornerback. We might take one in the first round. We can go get a proven, established guy in Jalen Ramsey. It's going to cost you a little bit more, but we could give a first rounder for him. What do you think about that?
I mean,
Jump
if it's
reaction. You don't think too much
if
about
it's as simple as that, you got to do it. But I think there's also the matter of his contract.
it. Yeah.
So right now you're trying to re-sign Deron Payne. You're going to give up a first round. I mean, he's worth a first round pick. That's a no brainer. But it's the
Yeah.
first round pick and the contract, and I'd rather put that money towards getting Payne locked up for a long term deal. If you're asking me, so I would have to
Yeah.
say I'd pass.
So unfortunately, yeah, his contract is tough. He signed a 5-year, $100 million deal in 2020. So you're looking at 2023 pre June 1st. Cut designation would be $24 million, and then 11 million and 3.2 million in the following years. So it's a lot of money this year. And then his cap number this year is 25, and then next year 26 and 22. So you'd be paying a high premium for a cornerback. But I just figured I'd be remiss to toss it out there. I agree with you. I think we've got too many guys to pay right now. I don't think it makes sense. That's probably why it's not coming up all that much. But it's interesting to think about, hey, we got this young quarterback. You've seen the Rams make those kind of swings. You've seen the 49ers make those kind of swings. You've seen the Bucks make those kind of swings. Let's really capitalize and let's turn this into a championship window with the way we have this roster set up right now. It's an interesting thought. I don't know if Ramsey totally takes us over the top yet, which brings me to I think my first pick would probably be Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon at cornerback. I think The offensive line, I think we can take care of in free agency. And I think also a lot of our issues last year was injuries. So there may be, if some combination of Larson and who's the other guy? Schweitzer. If some combination of those two can get healthy, that's at least one body somewhere, maybe. But I'd
Can't
also
take
be
that
totally
chance.
happy. I'd also be totally happy if we can get like if we can get something good at tackle or guard in the first round. Like I'm totally fine with either, but my first choice would be Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon. I do like him. I think he's very talented, and I think I think he could help us sure up in that secondary because we saw last year when the defensive line was really getting home, it was because the secondary was playing really well, and we were able to rush 4 or 5 guys and let that secondary cook. So if we're able to sure up at cornerback, I think that would be my first
Yeah,
priority.
Joey Porter out of Penn State seems to be getting a lot of
Yeah,
attention as well, and even mentioned that they spent quite a bit of time with him at the combine. But if it's me, I still go line. I'm not going to claim to have a draft breakdown just yet, or have broken down tape or anything like that. I'll get right
yeah,
on that. But yeah, it's there's an opportunity there, and I mean the good news is I kind of feel like for the most part it seems like we're going to be able to bring most of the roster back from last year, so at least there's a really good foundation there, and then through free agency and yeah, like ownership, which I think is our next topic, real quick, is going to have a say in a lot of this. I don't know whether that's going to
yeah,
get settled by the draft. I guess that's a big variable is how long does this drag out? Seems like it's headed towards dragging out longer and longer and longer, which is not great news. But um, you know, if that owner comes in, wants to make a big splash quarterback, or says let's take a quarterback in the first round, I just feel like we need to do that. It
yeah,
could change a lot of things in this dynamic. But hopefully, they'll also be able to be ready to spend money in free agency, which could help a lot. So, we're
yeah,
kind of operating under this cloud of, you know, this is all based on what Ron thinks he wants to do, but there could be another really strong influence in all of that real soon, hopefully real soon.
yeah.
So,
So last curveball for the draft conversation here. Let's address the elephant in the room. Should Anthony Richardson be available at 16? How do you feel about that?
I mean, here's how I feel about that. I always feel that way. Quarterback is not a settled situation. And if you talk about positions of need, right, we just brought cornerback, O line. If I was going to pick my top three, quarterback would still be in my top three. Because I'm
Yeah.
by no means thinking that Sam Howell, the only guy signed on the roster, is a good enough solution. So if it's 16,
11 NFL completions, guys. 11 NFL
right.
completions.
So if you are in love with the guy that's available at 16 on the most important position on the field, go for it. I don't think Richardson's going to be there based on what we're hearing now. He seems to be climbing the board and apparently killed it at the combine, ran a 4.4340, broke the jump record, whatever that number was. I don't
He's
think
a
he's going to
freak
be there.
athlete.
But if you love him and he's there, or any other quarterback, and you love them and they're there, you go for it. And it doesn't hurt
Yeah.
you to have. Now, granted, you draft that guy number one, he's probably got to be your QB1 now, and not Hal. You're not going to draft the quarterback
Yeah.
number one to sit behind a year two guy who's essentially a rookie. But having two is better than having one.
As long as you get, I mean, we had a little bit of, we could be having a little RG3 Kirk situation 2.0 here, like a high draft capital, high ceiling guy, and then more of a game manager type profile in that second backup role, kind of competing with each other. And you never know. And that's so the Richardson thing, if he's there at 16, I'm not sold on moving up because of this condition the team's in. If we had a better offensive line, I might even say, let's move up and take a swing. But if he's there at 16, I'm not totally against taking him for that reason because he's such a volatile prospect, and we have Howell who might be ready, might not be ready. If Howell has to sit for another year, behind this volatile prospect to see if he can work out and Howell comes in year 3, maybe you've got something there. And if you don't have to bring Howell in, I mean, all you really lost was a 5th-round draft pick, and maybe you can trade him, or maybe you just have a good backup, you know? So I'd be there for it. If he's there at 16, I would do it. But anyways, let's move on real quick. I think let's just take a quick, maybe 5-minute look at the ownership situation. Um, Lot came out this week. A lot of stuff that is frankly above our pay grade in terms of criminal, financial fraud, etc. You guys can go read up on all the great reporting that happened about that. It's negative stuff. It sucks. I really hate being a fan of a team that is owned by Dan Snyder. I love being a fan of the Washington Commanders. I bleed burgundy and gold, but I hate being a fan of a team that's owned by Dan Snyder. So I want to start this off. I was getting dogged in my group chat about Dan, and when the facilities thing came out about having the worst facilities, and everybody's like, we've been telling you this. This is why Russell Wilson never had a chance of coming to DC. This is why you guys never had a shot at getting an elite quarterback. This is why you've always sucked. I want to give my official statement on everything relating to Dan Snyder. Dan sucks. Somehow, he's always worse than we think he is. The NFL is trying to force him out. So I think it's going to be an absolute whirlwind of investigations of his scumminess until he sells. Not one of us Washington fans have ever supported or defended Dan. We are only guilty of being loyal to our team, even when the owner has given us absolutely no reason to do so. It sucks. Everything has been really hard. And as a fan, it just hurts to see all this stuff come out. And it's really disappointing. And it's one of those situations where every time I read something new about Dan, I'm like, wow, he's even worse. I had no expectations for him to be bad, and he's
Well, but
even
he's
worse.
also, to be honest with you, and you know, he's made more money than I'll ever even, dream about in my lifetime, right? But it's just not very smart. At the end of the day, it's
No,
just not very smart. You
I
had a
get it.
chance. Here's what I think happened, right? You had a chance to go quietly, right? And just sell the team for record value, right? But you're trying to set that price at a crazy number. And now you're trying to set these conditions and you're starting to backpedal a little bit. And the NFL and the Washington Post and ESPN, maybe even Bezos, flexed their muscle and said, okay, you want to play that way? Here's one report. Here's another
Yep.
report. Here's another one. And they're just going to continue to just go there until he, you know, concedes a team. And it's inevitable. It's just like the name change or other things that have happened. It's inevitable that's going to happen. Of course, he's going to make it as painful as he possibly can. Having said that, tomorrow morning, maybe the deal will be done. There's rumors like crazy everywhere. I've seen rumors on there was one Twitter rumor that, the had inside source saying the deal was already done with one of the potential owners. It's a done deal. Of course, we've got rumors of Bezos meeting Jerry Jones at St. Martin, and Jerry Jones trying to broker the deal. I mean, it does feel like more and more to me that maybe just stating the obvious that Bezos is really the NFL's choice, and they want to try to get him in there at some point. But who knows? I mean, it's crazy, and I guess it's just one of those things that until it's done, we won't know what's going to happen. We won't be
Yeah.
sure of the timing. But yeah, I mean, we just got to continue to ride it out. But it is this dark, ominous cloud that sits over the franchise because, like we said, all that stuff we just spent 30 minutes talking about could all be out the window, with new ownership. And we're all just anxious to get to that next phase and that next step. I just hope that after the karma's out there, that after all these years of suffering under terrible ownership, that we'll get the best option. Whichever one of these three guys, I guess it's down to Josh Harris, Jeff Bezos, and Tillman Fertitta. Who's the best one for us? We don't really know, but I hope it's that best option somehow, that karma works out where it's the
Yeah.
best option for the team.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That's kind of where I'm at. I'm not going to pretend to like, obviously, Jeff Bezos, somebody that's been in the public light. Um, and he's been, obviously he's somebody that's been in the public light and has been a big deal, and you know a lot about him through that in the last few years, just with his immense amount of wealth. And then you've got Josh Harris and Tillman Fertitta. I don't even know how to pronounce the second guy's name. We're not going to act like we really know what the best one is. I also don't run a multi-billion-dollar
What kind
corporation,
of
so I don't really
Italian are
know.
you? You don't know how to pronounce Fertita.
Is it confirmed Italian?
Oh yeah, Sicilian
All right.
descent.
All right, well, we got our
Is he
first
new
choice
your
then.
is
Come
her,
on.
her new favorite?
Come on, Bob, lead with that. I mean,
He hasn't
way to bury
hasn't
the
exactly
headline.
lit it up in Houston, but
Way
anyway.
to bury the headline. I mean, we got a Paisan getting drafted number one overall in the NBA draft, and now a potential Paisan beats saves the Washington Commanders from the hell that has been Dan Snyder. I mean, come on, that is unbelievable. Okay, well, I got my first candidate. I mean, that shows you how much I care about which billionaire buys the team. I mean, it just doesn't. To be honest with you, doesn't matter. We're not gonna. It does matter, but we're not gonna know why it matters until
I
it's
think
already
Bezos is
done.
the most exciting.
So
You
yeah,
touched on it in previous pods just because of the amount of wealth that he can bring to the team, and they continue to say he's already had discussions with DC government. He's the one guy that can really build the same stadium with his own financing. These other
yeah.
guys seem to just be stretching over the limit to be able to buy a team, and then you wonder, well, how are they going to deal with the stadium situation? So, but who knows? Who cares? I mean, we care. Shouldn't say who cares. We care. Want to get it done. We'll be excited when it's done, but
Yeah.
it's out of our control, obviously, right? Nothing we can
I
do about
think
it. So
I guess when you look into the amount of money that needs to be spent on this team, you've got to pick Bezos as your one seed because he just has it,
yeah,
right?
exactly.
But I mean, we all know having it and being willing to spend it are two very different things. But you'd hope whoever's going to buy this thing wants to make it profitable. So
Yeah,
I mean, and the best way to make it profitable is to win. So let's hope we can get some wins going. At the end of the day, Dan Snyder's not calling Scott Turner and telling him to abandon the run against the Giants. So I just want all the fans to keep this in mind. It's a trickle down effect, but at the same time, there is a lot to look forward to on the field and a lot the guys that are doing that's good. And, you know, we all find different ways to cope. That's how we're choosing to cope with the Snyder situation is to just focus on the field and root for the team.
it's
So
gonna happen. I
I'd
mean,
encourage the fans to just
it's gonna
continue to do
happen.
that. And I think, yeah, one way or the other, whether they force him out he uh, or he just sells, I think it's a done deal. Let's just hope that's how it goes, and he doesn't pull the old 1-2 on us. But until then, I say we wrap this thing up. We've been talking here for a minute now, and there's not. I mean, this is a classic early March podcast. Not a ton for us to cover. So for my last podcast as a 25-year-old, I say we wrap this
Woo!
thing up, Pop. Until then, I've been Dom.
This is Pop. Happy birthday, son.
Thank you, Pop, and thanks for another great one.
Love me, baby,